Welcome to Golden Mastermind Seminars Radio with your host, Jeffrey Combs.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jeffery Combs, President and Founder, Golden Mastermind Seminars Incorporated. Great to be here with you today. A gratitude to be alive here today. Just some deep gratitude. I want to share some of that love with you today. Topic for today's Facebook Live is asking, deserving, and receiving. And I'm going to go over and get the book Letting Go. Right here it is. And I'm going to cover some content from here today. So it is Tuesday, 2 for Tuesday. Anniversary day goes back to, let me remember this. This call goes back to, started this call, it actually was a Tuesday afternoon call that I started in 1998. And it was the Tuesday afternoon workshop is what it was originally called. Mastermind workshop. The Mastermind Alliance workshop at 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific. And that was every Tuesday when I started in 1999. I moved it to Tuesday night. Jim Hammonds goes back many years to following me. How many of you remember the Tuesday night More Heart Than Talent mindset call? Matt Smith, you were on that call back in the day. Back in the day, in the 2000s, it was not uncommon to have 500 to 1,000 people on my Tuesday night More Heart Than Talent call. I interviewed Jim Rohn twice on the call. I interviewed Mark Victor Hansen on that call. I interviewed Joe Dispenza. I interviewed John Assaraf, Judith Orloff, Susan Sly, Alexis Romano, many exceptional people back in the day. Ron White, the world champion of memory. Many of you have been on some of those old school calls. Hi, Sarah. Good to see you this afternoon. Jim Hammonds, thank you for being a loyal follower. Jim, how long have you been following me? Matt, I believe you and I go back to 2014 in that era, somewhere in that era. Scott Lucas, good to see you this afternoon. So those of you who are here this afternoon, thank you very much. The topic is really, it's not just a 12-step topic, but those of you who live the 12-step program, asking, deserving, receiving, is a major component of that crossing the bridge of recovery, because we have spent so much of our life in addiction of not being good enough. So being able to cross that bridge is being able to take that step over the line and step into consciousness and letting go. Now, this book I'm on copy number 2 of this book. Good afternoon, John. John McFadden, who has been my client for going on 3 years, is here. So this morning, I was in the chapter on stress. Really good content for you. I'll find where that is for you. But that content on stress, it's covered in chapter 2. Then there's a chapter on stress that covers the repressed and the suppressed emotions. For those of you who are relatively new to my content, or those of you who have been following for years, I've been covering this content in the letting go of the suppressed and the repressed emotions. And this is why we attract narcissists, perpetrators, and violators. We either attract them as they're our customers, or they're other contractors, or they're vendors, or they're intimate relationships that we are in. And then we attract these crazy people, and they either don't pay us, they don't follow up, or we attract them as employees. So we end up attracting these crazy people, and then it makes us crazy, and that fulfills the neurochemical craving of being emotionally addicted to a set of feelings. And then we act it out with alcohol, food, compulsive debting, spending, pornography, and a host of other situations to fulfill our low self-esteem. Now, the topic for today's Facebook Live is asking, deserving, and receiving. Being able to ask your employer for a raise. Being able to ask your client to pay you when they're behind. Feeling comfortable enough and deserving enough that you can reach out and ask for the commitment And then when you are compensated or someone gives you a compliment, Hunter Wright, good to see you this afternoon, asking, deserving, receiving, you are comfortable in feeling that you're feeling those emotions that you deserve it. Now, the word deserve comes from the Latin word deservier, deserve. Oh my God, Josh Waxman has also joined me here this afternoon. Josh is one of my keynote speakers at Millionaire Blueprint, and he covered money. He's covered money back to back at 2 of my events and the laws that govern money. So the topic today is very deep. It's asking, deserving, and receiving. Josh, feel free to add on to this content. Matt Smith, feel free also to write content, add on here about what asking, deserving, and receiving means, especially once you enter a recovery. And asking, deserving, receiving is very contradictory when you're addicted to addicted relationships, you're addicted to drugs, alcohol, chaos, drama, and other situations. Because what happens is oftentimes we'll either put in the effort and not get compensated, or we don't put in the effort and don't get compensated because we don't deserve it. And then someone will compliment us and we will blow the compliment off, or we will deflect the compliment because it's so contradictory to how we really feel. And so we will use our ego and high self-confidence while really living in low self-esteem and then not really deserving it. And in money, it's also called the law of the lid. And in the law of the lid, we can graduate to this certain area of money that we're only capable of deserving and receiving, and then we tend to sabotage the opportunity to get a raise, to receive the compensation we deserve, or if we're a contractor, we won't pursue the money that people owe us because it would contradict our feelings, and then we don't want to bother people that owe us money. So we live in this low self-esteem, uncomfortable in asking, deserving, and receiving. And in dating, there'll be a woman or a man who will reach out to us, and they'll let us know they're interested in us, but then we will sabotage that relationship or that opportunity because we're not good enough. And then we'll go out and have a relationship with a very dysfunctional narcissist or perpetrator, or someone who will violate us or who will cheat on us to fulfill our feelings. And we play this drama out over and over and over. And this is why it's so important that in your breathing skills, that you're able to breathe in love, you're able to take in joy, you're able to relax free of guilt, you're able to produce in power, not in force. And in that energy, that transmutation of energy that you're transmuting, you're in higher consciousness. This is when the clients show up. The client begins to pay you more frequently. You don't experience the let me talk to my husband or my wife. Those of you who are professionals at sales understand how frequently it is in selling, how many people you'll have that person right there at the decision point, and then they magically, mythically come up with this reason not to commit that day, and then you don't hear from them again. Well, sometimes that's about your own deserving issues, and it's also about their own deserving issues. And that's why it's so important that you begin to understand people are predictable, why they do what they do, and that you're able to easily and effortlessly let people go who don't qualify for your time, service, business, whatever the situation is, and you're able to let them go without a story. Now, Matt said, I'm always letting go of trauma-based identities built from unresolved pain. That's very good. So, and Josh says, we will not ask if we do not feel we deserve, and therefore we do not receive. And it's very common for people who have contracting businesses to have a lot of unpaid debt out there because of how uncomfortable they are asking for it or how late they are in billing for it. And then they owe vendors and other contractors, but yet they have $250,000 of unreceivables out there in the wind. And it happens to many companies who are not skilled at asking, deserving, and receiving. Now, in this book right here, on chapter 2, it's very, very important that you grasp that chapter. It's called The Mechanism of Letting Go. And on page 11, I'm going to go to this section right here. In page 11, it covers it right here. Suppression and repression. This content right there is gold, suppression and repression. That content is also covered later in the book when it comes to managing stress. And Hawkins uses the word stress, I use the word anxiety, but being able to understand why you live in such hypervigilance and why you live in repressed feelings and why you're angry and why you lose your composure and lose your cool and why you live in that energy, that angst energy, that force energy. That's because of the repressed feelings that you've forgotten, the trauma, and then the suppressed feelings that you sabotage yourself over and over. And the more that you grasp this and the more that you actually step into the power and realize how sensitive and defensive you are, how much you have a hair trigger, how much you live in resentment of not being where you think you should be and thinking you deserve something you haven't earned so that you can stay in that payoff of resentment. And the more that you begin to understand and grasp these feelings you hold on to, then you move into the elevated state of no longer the trauma bonds, no longer the panic patterns, no longer the mind-body connection to the events that shape the feelings. And for those who've been attending my Millionaire Blueprints last year and this year, I'm going to continue to next level the understanding and the awareness of what fight or flight means. Jose is on the Facebook Live today. Jose and Josh have been to all 3 of my events. And there's a few other people that have been to the 3 Millionaire Blueprints that I've hosted. For those of you who have not attended one of these events and are a coaching client, I highly recommend you attend the December one because every one of them is just going to get better and better. I'm going to bring Cara DeChico Sandre to one of them who can really assist the audience in understanding the value of muscle testing. Because in muscle testing, the body doesn't lie. Because in muscle testing, the body will let you know where you are emotionally, and you can see how the body responds to certain situations. When you continue to hold on to trauma, you're going to create dis-ease in your body, especially gut issues. Your body will hold on to more weight, and then you'll continue to manifest gut issues, digestion issues, which then can lead to other situations that can lead to the C word. And if you want to eliminate or avoid that, then it's very, very important and just in the simple terms, love yourself. Now, that means love yourself despite the fact that you're not a millionaire. Be able to be less critical of yourself, even though you continue to make mistakes. Own the mistakes, practice forgiveness, go to bed in peace, and start over the next day and give yourself the permission to go back-to-back days without relapsing. And for those of you who really want to cleanse your body, practice fasting. Find a really good fast, a short fast, a 1-day, a 2-day, a 3-day fast, and start to clean your system out. Let go of this whole toxic agenda of how you've been conditioned to stuff your feelings with food. Alcohol is another situation. Do your best to purge yourself of alcohol, nicotine, marijuana, and then the pharmaceutical medication. That's a whole nother discussion to have in a more intimate environment, because that's a whole nother trauma-based mind control that you really require to understand and practice the depth of letting go. The real key to your recovery and then your sobriety and then your consciousness coupled with your success at the same time is understanding the fight or flight reflex that becomes automatic. It means you're from 0 to 90 without even knowing what happened to you. You're in a full-blown argument with your soon-to-be ex-spouse. You're in a full-blown confrontation with your customer. You're in complete emotional breakdown due to something that almost happened. You're completely overmatched and overwhelmed about the future that hasn't happened. You're so worried about the collapse that's about to happen that you make mistakes that you don't have to make. And so these are the areas that you take a good look at and you have a better understanding. The let go process is not a how do I, it's a why do I do what I do? And I'm going to practice emotional sobriety 1 day at a time. And you begin to grasp the content. So reading the book is one situation, but the mastery of the emotions is what will separate you between consciousness and anxiety, fear, and doubt. If you're chronically in anxiety, fear, and doubt, and you stuff your feelings with food, or you compulsively debt, or you use pornography, or other situations to continue to create that cardio cocktail, that adrenaline high, and then you want something to take that edge off so that you can have that instant gratification, well, those are the feelings you're addicted to. That is the vault that you begin to look at. You're able to look at that whole package objectively. You're able to take your parents off the mantle. You're able to take a look at cause and effect and why you do what you do. And then if you're hosting events, or if you're prospecting and doing calling, you're letting go of being the man, being the issue, and you're able to just be humble and really bring your humility down here on the ground. And instead of being the man, you focus on being your best man. And instead of going for the watch and going for the car and winning the award, you let your production do that for you. And instead of get on stage, which is such a common term in network marketing, direct sales, insurance, real estate, and these other situations, you end up being on stage because you deserve it, not because you jammed something in at the last minute and then you won the trophy. And I see so many people do that. It's called recognition. And when you are more production conscious than recognition conscious, you will get recognized from power, not from force. I have watched for 35 years how babies cry for it, men die for it, recognition. I'm a recovering recognition junkie, and I used to feel if I wasn't on that stage every month that I had done something wrong, that I was going to shame myself, I was going to be embarrassed, and I let company owners and company leaders intimidate me and guilt me and shame me into doing these things that were uncomfortable so that I could get this recognition. And when I started my own business and I became a lot less recognition conscious, and I realized a lot more of the error of my ways, there were so many ways I could have improved it, but I just realized how recognition conscious I was because I didn't deserve it, and I was looking for that recognition to fulfill the hole in my heart from not being good enough. And that was from all the repressed feelings, the violations, the traumas that I'd held on to, that I didn't know, didn't understand. Then I would attract people to my reality in my intimate relationships, that I would make mistakes, get in trouble, and then talk myself out of these situations and feel that neurochemical craving, that high. And so Josh just said he's letting go of being recognition conscious. Very good. And what you'll find is when you're not so recognition conscious, you get recognized for the people who recognize you for your humility, not your production. And that humility then leads to higher production because you're not in the force of it. That becomes the manifestation of attraction, where you let go of the recognition, you let go of the pressure you put on yourself, and then there becomes a more natural flow, and that term is called prosperity or prospero. You are in the flow of life, you're not in the resistance. You're in the flow of life, you're not forcing life. And you're no longer the issue. You're able to take yourself out of the equation, and then you become the steward of the information. You're the deliverer of the information. You are not the information. And this is when it begins to flow out of your consciousness, because you become the master. You're not the vessel. You're the master of your emotions. You're not the ship any longer. And there's not this undue pressure you put on yourself, because then you realize in humility there is no pressure. If you're not forcing yourself to get this recognition or this reward, or if you're not going after the guy or the girl, or if you're not buying this car on credit to prove to someone you're good enough. I see so many people do this. I did it myself. I used to think, God, if I just had a better car, well, I used to be so embarrassed of my car that I'd park it around the corner. And if I just had a better apartment, I used to romance my first home and what that home was going to do for me. And then I had all these stages of arrival that I would intoxicate myself with, and they were all recognition conscious. And when I started letting go of that in 1996 and 7, then a different level of people began to show up, which then the rewards became different. There was a different feeling for them. This is why asking, if you have challenges asking, it's because you have uncomfortability with yourself and you're creating a story about the outcome that either is or isn't real. If you have challenges deserving, it's because you're not good enough. And deserving means deservie, day of service in Latin, and you're not good enough. And if you're not good enough, you'll sabotage yourself over and over to fulfill the feelings. The ideal candidates show up and then we sabotage it to fulfill those feelings. And if you're not skilled at receiving, it's more than likely a codependent issue where you lost your identity as a child. You had to be a grown-up as a child, and you're a people pleaser and a server and a giver, and then these words come out of your mouth frequently, and you de-edify receiving, and then you give, and serve, and do, and you become skilled at doing things for the community and the culture, but you don't produce results for yourself because you're so conditioned to be codependent and over-obligate, enable, do more for others than you do for yourself, and that's based on guilt and selfishness. I coached an exceptional woman today on being able to put herself first for the first time in her life at 37 years old, rather than putting herself last. And she grew up on the family farm, and it was sun up to sundown, and the term chores. Now, if you know anything about farming like I do, chores are a key term. Chores mean work your ass off from sun up to sundown, 7 days a week, maybe take Sunday off, and worry about the crops, worry about the weather, worry about the market, and then worry about the bank taking the farm. I mean, it just becomes such a headspace that people live in, and then they never get ahead. They just live in the just barely get by mode. So today's topic, asking, deserving, and receiving, is a skill that you take in, you breathe it in. You breathe it in and you release it and you let it go. You separate your feelings from the events that shape them. You give yourself permission to ask for the commitment. You ask for the date. You ask for the money. You ask for the promotion. And you ask because you put the effort forth and you deserve it. And when you truly deserve it, it's not coming from pride, it's coming from consciousness. But if you're in pride, that's when your ego gets in the way and you think, well, I deserve to be there. I shouldn't be here. Well, you're going to be right where you are because of the actions and inactions that have you there. And then receiving becomes the skill that's as equally as important as giving, and you're as skilled at receiving as you are at giving. And this content is, I'm going to go ahead and hit the record button and it will be available for replay. Any of you that are on today's call and you or today's Facebook Live, and you would like to speak to me regarding Millionaire Blueprint or rehiring me to be your coach, I would be honored. In the next day, I'm going to release a Zoom that I'm going to host on August 18th. I'm going to do a 1-hour Zoom on the psychology of recruiting. That will be a $99 Zoom with added bonus products. So I'll be releasing that in the very, very near present in the next 2 days. So thank you very much for being here this afternoon. I'll be back here tonight at 9 p.m. Pacific. Asking, deserving, and receiving. You deserve to receive.